Joining us. I've got on the screen here, I hope you can all see it. That's just Matthew's bio here. So Matthew started his pseudo about 22 years ago, but he's been in the business a long time and he's very knowledgeable about the topic. And as you all know, we are dealing with the FTC safeguards rule this morning. So the FTC safeguards rule is a project that the FTC is driving, and it's to ensure that there is more compliance when CPAs are dealing with end users' data. So Matthew's going to chat to us about it this morning, and I want to hand over to him. So Matthew, there you go.
All right, thank you, Francois. I appreciate that introduction, and I want to start out by, just before I start getting into the presentation, I appreciate everyone taking the busy time out from this, tax season to join us and to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes with us to discuss why this new mandate is important. So let me start out with sharing you a story of a recent call that I received from a business owner who was an accountant. She got into the office and then she started wanting to get to work. And before she could do anything, she tried to open her computers and try to access her files on the computer and the server, and nothing was working. It kept prompting her to enter a password. And she started contacting her own IT guy and asking, hey, what's going on? And he couldn't figure it out. He says, hey, I don't know. It looks like you need to enter some type of code. And then she didn't know what to do. And she reached out to us and trying to figure out, can you help? Because I have to get my work done. And I have 25 people waiting for me to get into the system. And as I thought about it, I go, wow, this is going to be very hard to deal with, given that she probably thought, she probably realized this has to do with ransomware, because her systems are completely locked up and nobody can do. And a lot of her staff, as you can imagine, during tax season are very busy, and they're all accessing this remotely. So why I start with this story is because the goal of today's discussion is this new FTC mandate rule called the safeguard rule. The purpose of it is to protect companies and consumer when they run into this type of situation. As you know, CPAs and other businesses that deal with consumer data have a lot of sensitive information. Social security, address, bank account, employees' record. They need to protect that. And that's what the purpose of why the FTC is mandating this, so that if they don't, can you imagine your business waking up one morning and you cannot do any work? And what are you going to do? So let me start sharing my screen. And as I start doing that, if you can do me a favor, let me know if you can hear me in the chat and tell me where you're from and stuff. That would be very helpful, just to make sure that if you're having any problems. And also in the Q&A session, Francois, do you want to tell them how to ask questions?
Yes, so if you have any specific questions relating to some of the topics or some of the items that Matthew is covering, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, next to your video and your speech button, there's a Q&A section there. What you can do is you can just click on that Q&A section and you can open and ask a question, and then I'll get Matthew to answer that for us.
Perfect. Thank you. So the topic again today is what your CPA and accounting firm need to know about the new FTC safeguard rule and what you can do to get protected today. Most people who are here, I'm assuming that you are a CPA, an enrolled agent, or a tax preparer that's wondering what the FTC safeguard rule is about, and what exactly you need to do in order to comply with this new requirement, to minimize your risk, avoid fines, penalties, and lawsuit in the event that if something were to happen to your business. So who we are, let me start about, as I mentioned earlier, I'm with Isudo Technology Solutions. We are a local cybersecurity and IT consulting firm in the Silicon Valley for the last 2 decades. And we specialize in working with small businesses like yourself, CPAs, accounting firm, financial service institutions, who deals with, have employees that are between 10 to 75 employees. Businesses call on us when they demand reliable IT services. They have compliance requirement like the FTC safeguard rules, or they need a cybersecurity risk assessment, or they need help with their Microsoft 365 cloud services. Just a bit about myself, as just to elaborate a little bit more, I've been in IT for over 25 plus years. I worked with a lot of the small businesses, but before that, I also worked with large corporations like IBM and Cisco Systems. And during that time, I also helped co-author a book called Managing Your Business Risk in the Cybersecurity Minefield. And this book was published on Amazon. It was well received, and it got the #1 bestseller in that category. And since then, over the last 25 years, I've been interviewed on CNBC and also featured in local newspaper. And this background image, you may be wondering where this is. This is a picture of the San Jose State. We're close by to San Jose State University. So onto the agenda for today. Let's dig a bit deeper. What the FTC safeguard rule is all about, how that can impact your business, and what are the timelines for you to comply with this? And more importantly, what can you do to comply? What are the steps? How can you get comply with this new safeguard rule? And one of the reasons why is all accountant, enroll agents, or tax return have to comply by June of 2023. And fines can range from $10,000 to $100,000 per violations. And if you are shown gross negligence, it can result in up to 5 years in prison time. So gross negligence could mean that you have intentional abuse of not protecting the data that you are privileged to have access to when you're doing tax returns. The question a lot of people ask is, hey, why should we listen to you guys anyway? I mean, who are you? We could be just a bunch of geeks who loves computers, and you're probably right. We do love technology, and we help people work with technology all day and every day. But here's the reality. Cyber attacks are happening every day, and things have changed. The cyber criminals are now running, ransomware as a service in order to target small businesses like yours, to hold them ransom, to extort money from them. And the reason why small businesses are such a prime target is because they have probably less security and technology in place compared to larger organizations. So they are considered maybe a low-hanging fruit compared to, let's say, a companies who's have millions and billions of dollars of revenue, and they have larger investments in training the employees about cybersecurity, protecting the company. So going back to my original discussion in the beginning, just to elaborate a bit more on that, the local CPA firm that called us when they got hit with ransomware, they only have about 25 employees. The reality was that they got compromised not only once, but twice. First, they got hit in one location, but they didn't properly protect that, and then they used that to compromise. They had two locations, one in Texas, one in California. All the data was encrypted. They couldn't work for weeks, and they lost a lot of revenue. But more importantly, can you imagine having to notify all their clients that their data has been compromised and that they cannot file their taxes? Or if their data was used to file fraudulent tax returns on their client's behalf, they would steal their Social Security and file a taxes. What would that happen to what would happen if that happened to your business? I mean, what would you do? Why are we different here? Is that, eSudo is an IT consulting firm, but what we focus on is that on securing your business so that you can have the essential technology to provide services to your company. And more importantly, is you continue to comply with these new requirements. Our team is constantly trying to keep up with date with all the security trends, learning about the latest technology and process and procedure. So we're constantly learning. At the same time, we're attending conferences, keeping ourselves up to date with other peer groups and mastermind in order for us to better ourselves. Our goal is to be your business partner, and we've been doing this for the last 2 decades, working with thousands of businesses in the Bay Area. So on to what the FTC safeguard rule anyway is, what the FTC safeguard rule is about anyway. As the name suggests, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is mandating that the implementation of new technologies, security controls to protect the security, the confidentiality, and integrity of customer information. And what customer information means is that any record containing non-public data or information about a customer of a financial institution, whether it is on paper or any electronic form that's handled and maintained by you and your affiliates. So it's important you understand that if you have access to confidential data, it's your responsibility to protect that so that if you get compromised, you could be on the hook for that privileged information. Now, what does that mean in terms of having a security policy or security program? According to the FTC, according to the section 314 of the FTC safeguard rule, there are 9 components that you have to comply with. Now, there's a lot. If you want to go and read it, you're welcome to go and read on their website what all the details about. But what we did was we summarized it into 4 core areas. The first one is, number 1 is having a qualified individual who's going to do a risk assessment for you. And I'm going to go into deeper in each of these 4 categories. The second is, once you identify what those risks are, how are you going to implement, protect your data and provide ongoing monitoring and services to comply with this? The third is probably one of the things that most people need to think about, is training your employee and your staff, including contractors that you use if they're going to access your client information. Helping them understand why they need to protect your data, protect your company, and monitor any suspicious activity to be compliant. And lastly is having an incident response plan. In the event something happens, just like that CPA firm, if you have an incident response plan, you have a written policy to know what to do. In the event that you get compromised, who's responsible for what. So let's talk about the first component of the first area. It's important that your organization have a qualified individual who knows what systems you have, what devices you use, where you're accessing the information from, where the data is being stored, whether it's stored on your cloud drive, stored on a local computer that's being accessed from home, or somebody's saving documents on a USB drive. You need to make sure you inventory every system, devices that are on your network that's being used by your team. That's what we do, is help you conduct a risk assessment to provide this, to understand where your information is being stored, what devices, so you know how to protect that information. Because a lot of people have systems that are out there that are being used, but may not be aware that local data is being saved on them. Hey, Francois, is there any questions and stuff before I continue?
Matthew, there was someone that asked about what happens if we don't comply.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go into a bit more detail. I'm glad you asked that. In the next couple of slides, I'm going to go over that. I'm glad, that's a good question. All right. So on to the component number 2 is, after you do the risk assessment, you have to then design and implement the security controls to minimize the risk. Because number 1 is to know what risk you have, where your data is being stored. Now, once you identify that, what are you going to do to come up with a plan to implement that? And then provide ongoing evaluation whether that process and the policies that you have implemented work. So let me dig a bit deeper into these areas here. First is implement and periodically review your access control. So what that means is that you need to, review who's have access to your systems, where the data is being stored. Implement that and have a process and a procedure in place to do all that. The second is, again, is once you identify where the data is stored, you also have to learn how to encrypt that information, because encrypting means you want to protect the data in the event, for example, if you have a laptop that you use, if that laptop is stolen and that data is not encrypted on there, what will happen? It makes it easier for the hackers or whoever have access to extract the data and view what's on there. That also goes to, that's what we mean by encrypt customer information on the system. This is when it's at rest. The other is protecting or encrypting the data when you send an email to somebody. Oftentimes, we see tax returns that are being sent over emails that are not encrypted. And that tax return has Social Security, address, bank account information to do the direct, what I call refunds. So can you imagine if somebody gets a hold of that? That's a lot of sensitive information. The next one is assess your application. So all the application that you use on your computer, on the cloud, are they protected? Are they up to date? Who do you know who have access to that? And do you have security controls in place, not just having a username and password, but within that application, do you limit access to say, hey, if you're in this department, you're not allowed to access certain parts of the applications because it doesn't apply to your job responsibility. So now, one of the most important things that a lot of people have heard of or familiar with is implementing this two-factor authentication every time you log on. Whether it's you're logging on from home using a VPN, logging onto your Microsoft 365, or logging onto, let's say, your QuickBooks account, do you have some type of multi-factor authentication, or every time you log on, are you being prompted on your phone to approve that logon before you complete the process? And then the next is disposing your customer information, because oftentimes, if you're like me, if you've been in business for 10, 20 years, how much data do you have? I mean, I have a lot of client information that was back when no longer doing business with me. I need to have a process to dispose that information, shred it out. So it's not a risk to my company to hold on to information that's no longer relevant. So it's important you have a policy that deletes or removes customers' data that no longer needed. And lastly is maintaining a log of what's happening when people accessing your system. For example, do you know if somebody's trying to access your email account from Russia? So you want to maintain the log of if these things are happening, you want to like stop that right away. You don't want to see somebody who's accessing your email system and they're not even in this country. So there's a lot that we just went through. What I want to say is that all these it's an ongoing, you have to keep, as your business change, as your application change, as your technology vendor change, you need to make sure that you do an ongoing evaluation of your system as your business and your network changes. So that's what this part is about. Anticipate and evaluate ongoing changes to your business. The third part is, of course, is your employees. Many of us have employees. Some may be part-time, some may be contracted, some are full-time employees. All of them have access to your company data and information. So it's important for you to train them to understand what is considered sensitive information, what you need to protect, and how to recognize when something looks suspicious. For example, you get an email in Outlook, and it's from a customer that says, "Hey, I changed my bank account. Can you change it on your system so it redirects me to my new bank account?" Now, it's important that is this a real thing, or is it sent from a fake email account that your employee needs to maybe call the client or the vendor to confirm that it's the correct user or the correct information. So this is very important, and this is what we help staff do, is train them, give them up-to-date information, and this is something that everyone needs to do today because security is now just part of doing business. So the next part is that this is a website called the Tax Advisor. And in this site, what we see is increasingly tax professionals are being targeted by identity theft, according to the IRS website. This website goes into explaining that, in the event that you get into a breach, the cost of a cybersecurity breach for just to do the forensic or to do the discovery can cost you between $70,000 to $300,000 just to discover how your system's been compromised. And here's the thing. If you believe that cyber insurance is gonna take care of this, you may be surprised that a lot of cyber insurance tells business that if you have not been maintaining your system and completing, having multi-factor authentication, keeping your software up to date and not backing up your data, they may deny your claim because you fail to maintain the proper security when you check off the box when you apply for cyber insurance. Now, after you do the forensic, this additional cost, the state and federal government and credit monitoring requirement could cost you an additional $100,000 to $300,000 to provide ongoing services to manage your breach. So can you imagine if your business got compromised? Can you handle this type of cost to your business, and more importantly, is your business can survive because of the reputation that now you've been compromised. So the last part of this is, if you do get compromised, you want to have an incident response plan in place. This is incident response plan is your emergency response plan. Just like you have an earthquake response at your home, you need to have this for your business. What happens if you do get compromised or somebody breaches your system? Who you're going to call? Who's responsible for what? Who is going to, communicate? How you, for example, who's responsible for communicating with the team? Who's responsible for communicating to your clients what's happening? And also, it's important to respond appropriately to your insurance provider, whether it is considered a breach or maybe it's just considered a security event. So this is important because if you report the wrong thing, the insurance company will automatically then could do a deep investigation. And if they do investigate you, they're going to have to take your systems, analyze it, do forensic on that, and you can't use it for months because they're going to scan your data and stuff. And now you have to go buy new equipment in order to run your business during this time. There's a lot we just went over, and I'm going pretty fast, so I want to just recap here. Oftentimes, doing the risk assessment, implementing what you find from the analysis, doing the employee training and incident response plan, there's a lot in place here. And on average, most business, depending on your size, it can take anywhere from 4 to 6 months to implement. So that's why it's important we tell people that if you want to do this, you have to get started right away. And in fact, let me ask, it's not a matter whether you want to. If you want to do business today, you have to comply with this new requirement. The deadline is June 9th. Now, here's the thing. It was originally December 9th of last year when this mandate was required. But due to a shortage of qualified professional like Isuto, the FTC extended it to June of this year. But do you think that's a lot of time left? Because I don't think a lot of business, doing tax season and stuff is going to have a lot of time to comply with this timeline. So it's important you get started today. So as we mentioned, it's time consuming. It requires, a qualified individual. The reality is that a lot of internal IT department may not have the skills or the qualification to do this because this is different from your traditional IT support. And oftentimes, the question that was asked earlier is, what happens if you don't comply? So as we talked earlier, if you don't comply, by June 9th, fines can range from $10,000 to $100,000 per violations. And if you've shown that you have gross negligence, you can result up to 5 years in prison. So your options are, either you can try and figure all this yourself in-house, or work with a professional like us who does and work with these type of things on a day-to-day basis. That's what we do all day and every day, is helping businesses comply with these requirements and protect them from ransomware and cyber attacks. When you partner with us, when you work with us, what does that look like? So oftentimes we partner with accounting, financial service firm to manage their cybersecurity risk and have the essential technology to grow revenue. People call on us when they demand reliable and security from their computer networks, when they have to have compliance requirements, or they have to do what we call a penetration test. The thing about security is that it's not something that you can do once and forget about it. You have to constantly provide ongoing monitoring because security is not something that you set it and forget it. The hackers and cyber criminals are hard at work every day trying to get people to click on the link, click on the text message that's sent to you, or the phone call, they call and says, hey, this is so-and-so, I need to verify some information. Is that correct? And so that's what we do, is help you constantly monitor your risks ongoing basis. We are a cybersecurity firm and top IT professional in the Bay Area. We've been doing this for over 22 years. And here's the thing, our firm is constantly trying to learn new tools and technology to keep up to date with all these new risks. So what's next? Next thing is, if this is important to you and you want to get started today, schedule a complimentary security strategy call with our team. You can go to this website, ask.esudo.com/intro, to book a free consultation or scan this QR code. So I'm ready to take more additional questions, Francois, if there's any. And if you happen to be the first 5 companies that contact us, we also have a bonus for you. So again, go to this URL, book a meeting, and if you happen to be the first 5 company, we have a special offer for you today.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. Yes, actually, that was very great. I have a question here. Don is just wanting to know, he's saying, obviously they're busy having tax season at the moment. Is there an urgency in doing this? They're quite busy up until April.
Yes, I totally understand that. I know a lot of, so just let me repeat the question. You're asking like, hey, we're very busy. What do we need to get started on this? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir.
All right. So that's a really good and very common question. And we get that a lot because we go, hey, I know you're busy. Every CPA I know they're working overtime. They're finding contractors to help them. But the reality is that you need to get started right away, because can you imagine that if you log in one morning, you go to your system, just like that CPA firm, and you can't access your data, you can't do anything, open your document or open your accounting software. The deadline is June 9th. And so with tax season and everything, it's a very short time for us to even get started, especially if you're waiting after tax season. We have a lot of businesses that are dealing with this. So it's important that you have a plan in place when you're going to do this. It takes 4 to 6 months, depending on what we find during the assessment. That's the reality. And we don't know, but it can take 4 to 6 months.
Okay. Thanks, Matthew. Then Ernie just wanted to know, he said, is there a cost involved if you click on this link and you make a booking? I mean, are they paying for that?
No, this is complimentary. We're doing this to educate our community, the people that we know that are in this industry, because we serve a lot of businesses over the last 22 years. The first thing we want to do is, hey, we want to make sure that what we do provide value. And in order to do that, we have to help you understand, this is a free complimentary assessment, and you're welcome to call us or go to the URL to pick a time and just pick something that's convenient for you that works on your calendar. And we know during the daytime you're super busy. So if you need to make special arrangement, call our office.
Thank you. And then this is not a question that anyone has asked, but this is just something that I encounter out there in the market quite a bit, is that there seems to be this confusion about who the FTC rule applies to. So a lot of people are saying to us, we only have 4 employees and we don't really deal with more than 5,000 consumer records. So are we really, are we still, does it apply to us? So
All right.
It does. And I think, Matthew, can you just elaborate on that?
That is true. So even if you are small, you have 4 employees, or you only work with, let's say, less than 5,000 consumer filings and stuff, it absolutely applies. Now, for example, if you have fewer consumers or tax returns you have to do, you still have to comply with all the security requirement. The thing that you may not have to deal with, there are a few exceptions, like doing ongoing risk assessment. You don't have to deal with that. However, you still have to encrypt your data, provide backup and multi-factor authentication. Those still apply to you. So it's important that you still need to know these apply to probably, again, there are 9 components that you have to check off to comply with this.
Matthew, just for clarity, so you're saying you don't have to do an ongoing risk assessment?
That's one of the exclusion. If you're that small, they said, okay, you're not required to do ongoing risk assessment all the time, but we still recommend that because any business that are out there today that's connected to the internet, you need to at least maybe do it once a year if you don't do it every quarter.
So just in clarification of that, it doesn't imply that you don't have to do one at all. It means you still have to do one. You need to do the risk assessment. You just don't need to do it on an ongoing basis.
Correct. And you don't have to do as much. It's just for a lot of businesses, if they're larger, they have to show proof that they are compliant, especially if you're buying cyber insurance.
Yeah, very true, very true. And here's the nice thing, guys, is that whatever you do for the FTC safeguards rule, you're going to find that you need to answer all of those questions in any event when your cybersecurity insurance is up for renewal. I think that's another conversation. That's another webinar we can have at some point, Matthew, is just what is happening in that industry and whether cyber insurance is still going to be around in the future. Our business is going to become uninsurable from a cyber security or from a cyber insurance point of view. But the nice thing is that if you do the risk assessment, you will at the same time be able to tick those boxes that you will in any event need to be able to tick when you do that insurance renewal. Am I right?
That's correct, because oftentimes, businesses that are out there, when they apply for cyber insurance, if they're our client, they often contact us to say, hey, do we have all these security measures in place? And in some event, we even work with an insurance broker to verify, to help companies to comply with these security requirements. And a lot of the stuff that the FTC is mandating is probably majority, they may have taken it from the insurance company.
True. Very true. Very true. I think it's just very topical at the moment. We all are concerned about the fact that our own data could land up onto the dark web. And, the reality is that anyone that works with a number of people at the same time, if you're collecting bank statements, if you have people's social security numbers on your hard drive, if you have any kind of sensitive information, even for your own staff, if you are collecting people's copies of their passports or copies of their social security numbers, if that's found on your hard drive and you are ransomware, you're going to make sure that that's encrypted, because otherwise you expose yourself to lawsuits out there.
Yeah, that's correct.
Are there any other questions that we have? I see we've got a few people that's joined us this morning. I'm guessing you are from CPA firms. If there is any questions, if you can just post it for us, raise your hand. There's a little button that says raise my hand, and then I'll wait for a second. Otherwise, we're going to adjourn. The link is still up on the screen. I have also posted it here in the chat section. You can just click on there, make an initial appointment. Remember, there is no charge for speaking to us and doing that initial conversation around, what it is that you need, if there's anything more, and we can certainly help and guide you there.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you taking your busy schedule this morning to join us. Again, if you still have any questions, just come back or call our office 408-216-5800, and we're happy to schedule a consultation to talk to you. All right, everyone, have a great day and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you, Matthew. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Bye-bye.